NRL Fantasy buy, hold, sell in round 13. We are through the first major buy rounds, and now the opportunity arises to spend some cash, buy some big guns, and use some of that money you got in the bank. Biz, how'd you go last week, and how you feeling this week?
Good week last week, almost 800 points, moved up a few ranks. This week, look, got a good team for this week. The problem is only 13 scoring this week. So it means that every team's going to have a pretty stacked squad. How are you looking this week, Wongy?
Man, I struggled last week. A few things didn't go my way. Had the full 13, but yeah, felt around that 750 mark. Sort of went from just inside the top 1,000 to just outside the top 1,000. I'm feeling good for this week though, and I think my plan going forward is really clean. So round 15, I really only need 2 middle forwards to fill out that round. So I think I should be sweet. But guys, just to remind you too, it is round 13, 13 players only this week. So you've only got to field that starting 13, as is the case with round 15, 16, 18, and 19. Now, buys here first. A couple of South Sydney legends, Koloamatangi, Ewan Aitken. We got a Hamish Stewart over at the Dragons, and then Campbell and Drinkwater at that wing fullback spot, who were two that we were watching for round 13. Let's start with Koloamatangi here. And Biz, this one feels like a no-brainer. Dual position, middle and edge. He covers both major buy rounds remaining. He is an absolute machine, and he's underpriced as well. If he keeps that middle forward spot and plays 70-plus minutes a week, he's probably one of the best players in fantasy, and he's borderline a fantasy captain consideration this week. Is there any reason why people shouldn't be tearing the teams apart to get Koloamatangi?
I think the fact is that you can only play three mids this week. So if you've got May, you've got Haas, and you've got someone else like a Tarpanay, then it's hard to fit in your mids. And then in your second row, if you've got, say, guys like Hosking, Wong, a bunch of other guys, I think it's a great decision to play in your edge this week. But same as the next
Yeah.
guy, Aitken. And I think he presents a lot of value. The problem with Koloamatangi is he's probably not that far off an origin recall.
Mm.
So if the Blues don't go as well as they hope and the Maroons pack kind of roll them up, tomorrow morning or tomorrow night, well, then we could see Koloamatangi make the squad. But other than that, I think he's a great buy. Look, he generally makes 25, 30 tackles and 250 meters when he's playing in the middle, and that's 40, 45, 50 in base stats alone. So if you add on his tackle breaking opportunities and offloads and things like that, because he is an attacking player, he's a wrecking ball. Like he's not a plotter. He can really rack up some big scores. I think a 60 plus average when he was playing in the middle last year. I think it's a great buy. Same with Ewan Aitken. Again, tough to squeeze in because you only need two edges this week, not dual position at center. Average is about 55 playing second row. And this year, I think across 3 games at second row, it's close to 60. Makes about 45 tackles, 130 odd meters. That's close to 60 in base stats. And he can break a tackle, he can score. So he's also a great buy. And also like Koloamatangi, underpriced by about 100, 150K. Look, the only question for Aitken is he probably does go to the centers here and there to fill in roles, and we've seen him play center this year. But they've just looked a lot better with him at second row than the out wide. So Koloamatangi and Aitken are great picks this week. The question is, can you play them, and who are you playing them over? But that's my only questions around them because I think they're fantastic buys regardless.
Yeah, see, I think they're super studs. I'm going to say Koloamatangi is a must-have right now. Ewan Aitken is a tier below that. He's a great option, but you don't have to tear your team apart to get him. The one risk, like you mentioned, Ewan Aitken going to center could be bad news. So Campbell Graham is potentially going to play Origin. As of recording, Payne Haas is confirmed to play for the Blues. Stephen Crichton is 50-50 for the game. If Crichton misses out, Campbell Graham will play Origin. Now, Campbell Graham has missed a lot of games due to injury recently, so my expectation is he probably doesn't back up from Origin, in which case Fletcher Myers is on the extended bench. He could come into that spot, or alternatively, we see Aitken go to center, which could trigger Koloamatangi going back to the edge back row spot, unless Jacob Host comes in from the extended bench. Right, so there's a bit of a mix mash of different things that sort of need to happen there. If Campbell Graham plays Origin, I'm slightly cooler on these two because that risk is, let's call that like a 5-10% chance of happening, which could totally ruin both of these guys. But if that doesn't happen, then yeah, Koloamatangi must have. Ewan Aitken, very solid option. They play late in the round, so if you are buying Ewan Aitken and Koloamatangi, try to gear your trades so that you can reverse those trades later. So the players you're selling, try to make sure they're not from teams who are playing a long time before South Sydney. tearing through to the next guy here, Hamish Stewart. I actually don't think this is a crazy option to take. Now, if you're selling two players and you can afford Koloamatangi and someone under 500K instead of the 621K for you and Aitken, Hamish Stewart's a great option. And for my side, I only need two middle forwards. So I'm heavily considering Koloamatangi and Hamish Stewart. Now, the upside here is that he's a PPM machine. He's been pumping out like that 50 sort of average over the last month of footy. The downside here, though, is Toby Couchman returns this week. Couchman will steal a lot of middle forward minutes. And right now, Jack DeBellin is named at prop. But as Couchman takes more of those prop minutes, DeBellin moves more into the lock spot. That's a big risk. The other thing is, in that last game, we saw Damien Cook play nearly 80 minutes and Jacob Little come on for about 55 minutes. So those two are eating up more and more minutes together. They are good enough to justify it. Like the hooker combo is talented enough to eat up those minutes. So Hamish Stewart could be the guy who gets squeezed out potentially. The thing I like, though, is Emre Gula's an 18th man. And we've seen Blake Laurie, David Clemmer, and Pacific Tonga all win their spots over Gula. And they're all lower minute guys anyway. So potentially Hamish Stewart will keep his sort of 40 to 50 minute role. If he can keep that, he's a 40 to 50 points and covers both major buy rounds.
Yeah, I think it's a good, interesting pick. The only other thing to say is Hamish Stewart has been lucky the last few weeks with injuries to the pack. Obviously, Couchman went down a couple of weeks ago. Egan went down the week before last. So we don't really know what his true minutes are. I think he is a 45, 50-minute guy because starting lock, there's a couple of guys I've got there, but I think at this price it's risky, but it does have upside because if he keeps getting 55 minutes plus, he could be the new Couchman of the team. So it's risky to miss it. The thing is, Couchman was kind of starting at this price at the start of the year, and he just kept getting minutes that no one believed in, and before you knew it, he was a 60 average player. So, it's hard to fit him. He's an awkward price, but it can definitely pay off. And we've seen with these Dragons is they have all high PPMs, like the way they play. They keep the ball through the middle, keep the ball in play. So a lot of points on offer. More straightforward proposition here in Jaden Campbell, though, following up. This one's an easy one because, look, we saw Foran play 6 and we saw Campbell keep his kick meters. And that's the most positive sign. That the only knock on Campbell this year was, with Keeney going down and Foran available in the mid part of the season, what does that mean for Campbell's kick meters? Well, we saw what it meant. He's still got 400 kick meters. If you had 400 kick meters and you have his track record at 6 last year, you're still getting a 60-plus point player. He's priced in the low 60s. Probably the best wing fullback you can have this year. I think if there's one person I'm getting in this week, it's probably Jaden Campbell because you've seen what he can do for the rest of the year. The only problem is he's got a really tough matchup in the Storm this week. So players might be willing to wait one more week and just make sure that they've got all their ducks in order because it could be a tough, rough matchup for the Titans playing Melbourne. Couldn't see much points there for them. But otherwise, I think he's still not that expensive. I mean, yeah, he's 777K. It is expensive, but we've seen him kind of score 60, 70 plus even when he doesn't get going. When he gets going, I reckon there's 100 in him this year for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So Foran coming back, you mentioned the kick meters. I think the other point to this is that Foran improves their team. So right now he's named in 14. We're expecting a late change with Brimson back to fullback. They're a better attacking team with Brimson at fullback and Foran in the 6th spot. Now, Jaden Campbell's the goal kicker. So if they score an extra try a week with Foran in that spot, he gets 2 points out of that as a goal kicker. So that kind of balances out some of the kick meters that you're talking about losing there. The other thing is the attacking opportunities for him open up a bit more too with Kieran Foran next to him. So I think he's a banging option. And I think the Storm game this week isn't one you can completely write off. Now, we've been guilty of it a couple of times this year where we've talked about, the Sharks up against the Roosters last week. The Roosters are missing all their players. The Sharks will roll them. Well, look at the Sharks. They turned up and they didn't really turn up at all. Chooks absolutely smashed them. The Titans have done that to the Storm before as well. So I have memories of games that were 38-36, games where the Titans have put on 20-plus points and beaten the Storm in high-scoring shootouts. And this could be one of those games too. They're playing in the Gold Coast. The Titans have a lot of guys backing up from Origin. So I'm going to sort of judge off, whether those guys are backing up from Origin, what I think is going to happen in this game. But I think the Titans are a shot at potentially upsetting the apple cart in this game. And Jaden Campbell will be right in the middle of it. So I think if you like Jaden Campbell, you get him this week and you don't worry about that fixture too much. Scotty Drinkwater is one who is a bit different. So he's a bit less exciting as a buy. We've seen him average a much lower score next to non-Clifford halves compared to Clifford. So It's a 55 average next to Clifford. It's around that 30 mark next to non-Clifford halves. That's a small sample size this year, but it's something worth noting. And for Scotty Drinkwater, they got clamped up by Manly before the bye. Manly then got smashed by Parramatta. So it's not a case of a great opposition necessarily. It's a case of that Cowboys attack just didn't fire. Now, the question is, how patient are you? If you buy him this week, is that Purdue and the halves experiment going to work this week? Will it take some time? The positive is they have the Tigers this week who, can leak some points. They're a good side, but they can leak a few. And Scott Drinkwater should be in the mix of it. So I don't know. I look at Scott Drinkwater and I personally think with that 75-point break even, you got to wait a week, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying him this week. I think he's a good option. I think he's still a great price for what he can do, especially with the goal kicking this year. But that high break even and only needing 13 this week, wouldn't be rushing in. Like the guys earlier on this list, especially Colo, Aitken, and Stewart, they have low break evens, so they could shoot up in price. Whereas Drink, he could score 70 and still lose a few K. So I'd definitely be sitting on and watching a week for him.
Yeah, and I left Aaron Clark on the picture just because Aaron Clark's doing Aaron Clark things. That man is the savior of fantasy right now. Now, pods up next. Juicy list this, and I just want to warn you guys, this is not for the faint of heart, this list. This is probably a bit of a watch list, I would say. So this list has featured guys like Aitken, Kaloa Matangi, a month before they were fantasy relevant. Guys like Radley was on there, a month ago as well. I think he was at 470K. Like this is where we put our speculators and guys who we think are gonna develop potentially into being relevant. Now this list has Radley, Coruscant, and Cook, both of those guys at hooker, and then Jerome Hughes and potentially Jamie Humphreys at some point in the future. So Victor Radley is the first one. This is a pretty stable one to start with, then it gets a bit crazy. But for Radley, 558K. He scored well last week, 59 points. There were some attacking stats in that as well. But do you have any interest in this guy, Biz? Like he's got the buys in round 14 and round 17. So he still covers all the major and minor buy rounds and has that dual position too.
Yeah, not for me. I think he is underpriced, but he's odd, like 558K. He loves a sin bin. He loves a concussion. I think the last thing you want is in the rounds you need him most, he gets a low score for those reasons. Touch wood, it doesn't happen, but I just think that there's better options through the mids, and edges and things like that. So he's a pod, but at 470K, it's a different proposition to 560K. So I think with that big score and now his price moving, I'll happily skip him.
Too little too late. And then we got Cook and Coruscant. I'll throw to you first. Which one of these guys would you rather talk about?
I think Coruscant is winning back a bit more minutes after Talon De Silva was sent to reserves to get a few more minutes. I think they're both interesting. Cook plays both major buys, whereas Coruscant misses round 15, if I'm not mistaken. So I think given how hard it is to fill a hooker in round 15, if I'm going one of them, I'm going Damien Cook. Just because I don't know who I'd play at hooker in round 15. Otherwise, if you don't have Jazz, then like what's the options, right? So I'd be taking Cook myself. I think they're both average options. I just think neither of them are keepers this year, and they're not really cashies either. They're not going to make that much cash. Coruscant obviously has a low break even after the heroics of his last game. Yep. But I don't think I'd be doing it until I saw... I mean, Coruscant with the 80-minute proposition is interesting. Cook is just not getting 80 minutes this year. And Little's playing arguably better than he is as well. So it doesn't look good on that front. So I'd be avoiding both, but just out of those two, I'd pick Cook solely because I'd need a round 15 hooker, and that's it.
You want to know something funny? I looked at Coruscant's numbers for this year. So 3 games over 70 minutes. His score range was 30, 60, and 104. So just this huge spectrum of scores, averages 6 missed tackles a game, has those big attacking days. I think Coruscant, by the way, if I was choosing one hooker to watch right now, it's Coruscant. Like he's silky, he's fun to watch. There's a chance that he does light it up. But yeah, you're right. Not playing both major buy rounds, it is tricky. But I had to include him here because he really is only a buy this week. Like he scored that 100. The price is going to shoot up. I'm not interested at 600K plus. But at 585, you could make a case where it possibly works. It's not for me either, but it is kind of interesting. With Damien Cook, I'll just shout out that 80 minutes last week, or last game anyway, at least, around 11. That's the thing I'm watching for there. Now, does he rock up this week and play 80 minutes again with Toby Couchman back in the team? That's my big question. If he does that, and if Jazz Tavanga looks set to cop a hit with Gerbo coming back, whatever it is there, I would consider the straight swap between like something like Jazz to Damien Cook. right, as a Jazz owner. But that would require a few things to happen. And if you have no hooker for round 15, then if he plays 80 minutes again, it looks like that'll be his role at 600, 620K, whatever the price will be at that point. Damien Cook is a guy who's proven he can go 60 plus with the best of them. Now, after Cookie, we got Jerome Hughes, who's also a previous fantasy gun, and Jamie Humphreys. I'm going to throw to you, Biz, and it could be the round 14, round 15, round 16. Doesn't really matter which round. But which one of these guys do you think you're more likely to be considering as a serious buy option at some point?
I personally think probably if it's now, it's Jamie Humphreys for the buy coverage. But if it's in the future, it's Jerome Hughes, just on the pedigree of scoring talent. The thing with Hughes is he's got 2 seasons under his belt where he's averaged 60 and 2 seasons where he's averaged 50 odd in the last 4 or 5 years. So he can be up or down. He doesn't look great this year fantasy wise. Whereas Humphreys is more of like the new Ferrari in the garage. He could be anything. We saw how good he was at the start of the year. Got a lot of kick meters last week, even with Latrell around, which is positive to see for him. Because the first week he came back from injury, it kind of looked like Latrell was taking all the kick meters and Humphreys was playing really secondary. Maybe he's just coming off a hamstring, but went back the other way in his last game where Humphreys took the bulk of the kick meters and it hurt Latrell. So if that's really the case where Humphreys is going to be the dominant kicker, then we've seen that he can be a big play guy. So 50 plus, 60 scores. Playing double buys, 538K. Really like the Humphreys proposition. But the reason I'm not as hot on Humphreys is if I really wanted to buy half, I'd wait a week and get Matt Burton next week. And Matt Burton's on this list of the buy, but he's similarly priced. He's finally got the goals back and the kick meters back.
What if the talk about Burton to fullback is true?
Yeah, see, that's an interesting one. That's kind of why you have to wait till after the buy. I find it odd to me that Burton would go to fullback. I just think that he's been playing well at 6. I mean, maybe he's even better at fullback. And if it's a situation where he's the fullback and throwing up spiral bombs and kicking for 400 meters and kicking goals, then he could be better at fullback than at 6 anyway, because it's not like he's a defensive 6 like a Dylan Brown or a Sharp making 25, 30 tackles with like not many misses. So I think really, yeah, I think I like Humphreys, I like Burton, and then I like Hughes below that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just because
so
of the
realistically, not much of these guys. I'm with you there too, because we'll talk about Savala later in the hold section, but I think Savala is going to be more relevant through this origin period than we originally thought. Jerome Hughes has that buy in round 15. The reason I flag him is he's got the Titans matchup this week. Titans, it should be a bit of a shootout. So there should be some points on offer. Cam Munster and Harry Grant backing up from Origin. So my guess is that Wishart will rest one of those two instead of Jerome Hughes this week. And he's had the bye to have a rest as well. So hopefully he's gotten that shoulder right. I think he's in a good situation to explode. My loose plan right now is to see some good indicators from him over the next 2 weeks and to buy him in round 16. I'm pretty excited about the potential of Hughes. So I've got him on my watch list for round 16, but if you wanted to be brave and if you were a team who, I don't know, like some of the people who watch, they started in round 10, for example, they don't have cash. If I was one of you, I would definitely get on Jerome Hughes. Or if you're someone who, you just missed a lot of the cash cows at the start, you're a first year player, whatever it is, jump on a guy like Jerome Hughes. You can have a bit of fun with that. Now, cheapies is pretty straightforward. This is a very cheap list, like extremely cheap cheapies. I feel like in previous weeks, Biz, we've been jumping into, the 400K range for our cheapies, but this week has some very cheap ones. And I made it especially cheap this week because we have so many buys that are in that sort of 500K bracket. So we really can't be talking about cheapies at 400. Lake and King Tongia first, 309K. If you're looking at him, Biz, and you're looking at, Latu Fainu, who's named, well, not named, but he's probably going to be back next week for the Tigers. Are you thinking about either of these guys? I mean, I'll throw some numbers at you. Latu Fainu, it's about the 32 average in reserve grade. So not a lights out reserve grade average. And Lycan King Tongia is about the same as well. So I don't see a lot of fantasy pedigree. I see two teams that can score a lot of points on their day, but aren't, super consistent, and two halves who offer some buy coverage, but overall just play half and probably don't make my 13 most weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've got King Tongia in my team now already, but I would be hesitant to buy him. I think, maybe less so because I think his job security is pretty decent now. I think he's looked pretty good playing as the Dragon 7. Got a little more kick meters in his second game than the first game, even though his scores were a lot lower. Sorry, third game versus second game. That 18 odd points wasn't great, but I think that's what you're going to get from a guy like him. I think, like you were saying, historically his reserve grade stats are kind of hovering in the high 30s to 40s the last couple of seasons. I think you're going to get some scores in the mid 40s. I think you're going to get some crappier scores in the 20s, and it's going to all shake out. So he's not a bad option just because he does play round 15, he does play round 18, he has great buy schedules. But halves are a position that's a bit, a lot of people, like I think 98% of the top 5,000 have Savala. You've got Savala there. Some people will have Isaiah Katoa, Nico Hines, etc. So you don't really need it. Like, I don't think King Togia is making my squad, even in those buy rounds. So really, he's just sitting there, hopefully making me another 100, 200K of cash, and I can sell him. So he's not an urgent cheapie by any means. And we'll talk about Latu Finder next week if he makes the squad, but it's probably going to be a similar proposition where you don't need to play him. Fantasy pedigree isn't there, and he doesn't play round 15 either. So I think if it was a finer show, I would actually be more interested in Luai post round 15 because we saw what he can do when he's the dominant playmaker. And with Galvin gone, he could just take off. So that's my thoughts for King Togia. Ben Decora is an interesting one because, talks that the Broncos have to change things up after losing 1 million of their last 5 games or something. And Payne Haas and Carrigan obviously carry their engine. They play 60 to 80 minutes on any given week in the forward pack. So if either of them get less minutes or even rested fully after Origin, that opens up a lot of minutes in the pack. Probably goes a lot to like Corey Jensen, who played a lot of big minutes last year. But Bentancur is a guy that has a really good PPM, who, if he gets 30, 40 minutes, could be really solid. But I actually think, other than it being a Bentancur show, I think it's more Corey Jensen and Xavier Willison who will benefit most in the Origin period. So I probably won't be buying him. He also misses around 15 as well. So probably an avoid for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if Payne Haas was to miss a game, Wilson goes to prop, Pierre Kura comes into the back row, kind of sponges up the minutes there. Jensen's still floating around as well. But Ben Takura is a guy who could PPM it up and does have some attacking stats in his game. So there's a world where if he did earn himself a 30-minute role, I'd be intrigued. The issue is you're going to have to watch a bit of footy and watch him rise in price to see if he's earned that role. So it's going to be very tricky to jump on him. Loco Pacific Tong is a bit cleaner cut. Now, the minutes have been trending in the wrong direction, so I'm not recommending this one, but he did win a spot in the 17 over Emre Gula, who's in the 18th man jersey. That's kind of interesting because that means that he's got a spot of sorts. Now, everything we talked about before with the minutes pressure on Hamish Stewart is doubly true for Loco Pacific Tonga because you have guys like Dave Clemmer who plays the same role as him. You've got other players there as well that can steal those minutes too. Blake Laurie, even on the bench, sort of plays that role. Couchman will eat up more and more minutes as well. So this is a bet on talent and a bet on him breaking out. It is not based in a lot of logic or data, really. It's just a bet that he will be so good that he'll earn himself 30 to 40 minutes. I think he's been good. I've liked him. He passes the eye test, but I haven't seen that level of good from him. And I don't think the Dragons have enough of a need for me to make this bet.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about him is he plays that round 15 and 18 buys in a tough mid position. But again, you might get him this week and he might not even make it to round 15 or 18. Like, imagine you bought this player and he's out. He doesn't have job security. They've got a lot of middles. They don't have a lot of, other than Couchman, they don't have any gun middles, but they've got enough middles to, these kind of rotation players. They can change here and there, and it could be Gula's spot any given week. It could be a Laurie day. It could be a Clemmer day. So I personally wouldn't bank on him. I'd love to just stash him as a cashy player in 15, 18, but I don't really trust he's going to be there, so I can't do it myself. So probably skip on him. I agree.
Do you have any interest in Bentley Hape here at all, South Sydney? I mean, he's been at this price for a while now.
Yeah, probably not. Talent's good, but again, a rotating door of backs in that South Sydney team. Don't know who's going to be there. Don't know when, where, and just probably not for me. I think I've got enough wing fullbacks. I've got Lord himself, Tommy Turbo, who isn't playing this week. But
me too, mate.
That's fine. Yeah,
I think this is an if you're desperate play though, right? Like if you're at a lower salary level, right? Your team is a bit poorer. You get a guy like Bentley Hape. He's going to cover both the wing fullback weeks there. So he'll cover rounds 15 and 18, major buy rounds at wing fullback for you. That's probably a pretty safe bet with Campbell Graham in and around the squad, with Latrell Mitchell in the team. He should be there. Then Owen Paddy's the last one. And I just got to mention this. If you've got Owen Paddy in your team, Tom Starling is out for a week with suspension. A flying shoulder charge to the head. It was one of the stupidest players I've ever seen. And it was shortly after, I think it was Tarpanay tried to get himself suspended. Right. They were just really fired up in New Zealand. And, after the game, you saw the Raiders players really geeing up the crowd as well. So look, whatever works for you, but it was insane from Starling. We're going to see what Paddy has here. Now, Paddy, he's no guarantee to play 80 minutes or 60 minutes or 50 minutes or even 40 minutes here, because the GOAT, Danny Levi, the vampire himself, is there to suck the blood out of the minutes here. And I don't know, I could just see it like a late swap where Danny Levi starts, and, Owen Paddy owners are absolutely raging. What do you think of this one, Biz? If you had Owen Paddy in your team, would you try and find a way to squeeze him into your 13, or do you think he's just a sort of 30-point plotter this week?
No, it has to be a loop. I 100% agree with you. It's Danny Levi starting this week. I don't think they're going to give Paddy the keys to the engine room yet. So I think it's a Levi day, baby.
Levi, 60 minutes, a try, and 17 fantasy points coming your way, guys. Now, the holds here, and this hold sell section, by the way, is kind of fluid. Again, like last week, there's a lot of guys that you could sell if you had the right move and if you need to, but we're just going to work through them and sort of talk about them. So don't get too sort of caught up on what section someone's in, but really listen to sort of how we talk about them. Now, Cam Munster, Nathan Cleary, they're the first two here. Both Origin halves. Both guys that are in my team right now. Both guys I'm holding that I wasn't sure I was going to hold about a month ago. Cam Munster on the back of back-to-back 70-plus games, has that Titans matchup, stays in Queensland for that game after playing Origin in Queensland. I think there's a pretty good chance that he backs up. The concern here is that Tyron Wishart's on the bench there, and Tyron Wishart's a very, very capable number 6. So if Munster comes out of Origin feeling a bit rough, you'll either get a rest in that game or potentially get rested completely. So there is a bit of risk there, but I think Cam Munster is one of the perfect guys to have in your side as a bit of a loophole half, and you can take his score. You can put Savala in if he doesn't play or doesn't score well instead.
I think his form is too good to sell right now, especially given what you just mentioned. So I'd be holding him. Cleary, I think, is a definite hold. If you didn't sell Cleary after missing the last 2 weeks, and he's got the Tigers and Eels matchups over the next 2 weeks, I think you have to hold him till at least round 15. They need him to back up. They don't want the spoon this year, right? So they've got 2 big games. I don't think they have the ability to rest him. They don't have a guy like Luai in the halves this year. If Cleary doesn't play, it's a very inexperienced halves lineup. I know Snyder's got some experience, but not too much of it. And they just can't afford to lose more games. I think Cleary backs up unless he cops a knock in Origin. And then if he cops a knock in Origin and he misses this week, then you maybe consider selling. But I think you're definitely holding him. If we knew for sure he was backing up 80 minutes, he could be a captaincy option this week. But obviously with Terrell May, with no Origin, you know what minutes he'll play. He's the safest option. But I think you're definitely holding Clear. It'd be crazy to sell him this week otherwise.
Yeah. Plays late in the round up against Parramatta. I have specific memories, though, of I think it was sort of 4 years ago, listening to a game on the radio where Cleary got himself sent off against Parramatta and scored 11 points. So there is that potential as well. If that happens now, by the way, I'm claiming psychic status. But
that was the spear tackle on Dylan Brown, right?
That's the one. Yes. Yep. So listening to that, I was driving through some patchy reception and only half heard it. I was like, have I heard this correctly? And I did. So yeah, Cleary, I think he's a hold, though. If he was out, by the way, he does miss this week. He'll play next week, and he misses 2 weeks in a row. So is one to consider selling at that point. Hugo Savala, I want to talk about this one in a bit of depth here because I think the loose plan of a lot of fantasy coaches has been, hey, Hugo Savala, you're doing a job for me, but you are disposable. I'm going to give you the flick after the first major buy round. What I think we've seen is him elevate past that. Now, the Roosters are, by all reports, talking to Daly Cherry Evans and looking to bring him in. I'd say he's probably going to be a Rooster, but look, I don't have any inside scoops there. What I'm hearing is that Sandon Smith is free to talk to other clubs, and he's chatting to the Cowboys. Apparently, there's a link to Parramatta, all that sort of thing as well. Now, if that's their plan, they're bringing Cherry Evans in. They're going to bring Sam Walker back in number 6 jersey, and they're going to keep Savala and move Sandon Smith on. Then my guess is they'll give Savala more time in first grade next to Sam Walker to play this year, and he'll drop back to learn under Daly Cherry Evans, which is a great position to be in for him. That means that he will play all 3 major buy rounds, and outside of that, just be a relatively solid scorer week to week as well. So I think he's a no-brainer hold. He plays all these bye rounds. Keep him and don't be tearing a team apart to go get some other half instead.
Yeah, the only thing I agree with everything you said. The only thing to add there is though, Savala's agent has come out and said that he loves the Roosters and he wants to stay. So with Cherry Evans coming, they said they'd love to explore a loan deal. So he might not be around next year either. So I don't really know. Like I think Walker and Sandon fit a lot better than Walker and Savala. But I agree with your logic too. But I think either way, until there's clarity on that, you're holding him. Like you hold him until he's dropped. He's making money. He's scoring pretty well, and he plays a buy round. So I think he's a no-brainer hold. Toby Couchman, look, I think you have to hold him. I mean, he's expected to come back next week. He's here this week. I mean, even if he is a late pullout, I think Couchman is exactly the type of player you need for these next 5 odd weeks. He plays 2 major buy rounds. He covers mid. He covers edge. He's a 61-point average player. I think if you've got him, you're holding him, and if you don't have him, you're buying him. So I'm not buying him this week, but I'm definitely buying him with an eye to round 15. So if you've got him in your
one
team,
thing I was thinking there because that's why I included Couchman in this hold section, just because he's not a buy this week yet, right? So like you said, waiting a week, give him a week to come back, see what the minutes are like. My forecast is about 50 minutes, which for Couchman usually means like 80 points. Now, realistically, like 55 points there. So just give him a week to come back, and then he's going to be a great target for next week. Jacob Preston, by the way, in the same camp there. He's back relatively soon. A very viable target as well in the next couple of weeks. So you don't have to rush all these players in this week and fill up your side because Couchman and Preston are going to be hot options if you have Couch you hold. Corey Horsburgh, Biz. I've just put little asterisks there to remind myself. But Horsburgh, is he a hold right now at, I think he's about 670K? Or is he one you could consider selling if it was your way to get to Kolomatangi?
Yeah, I think he's one I am considering selling because he's outside of my 13 this week with Tarpanay, Haas, and May in my middles. So I don't really have a need for him, and he doesn't play around 15. So he's kind of peaked at price. I just think he's going to make his way back into the Origin arena by game 2 or game 3. If Queensland aren't doing too well, if they lose tomorrow, I think Hawes goes into the squad. And look, I do need mids for round 15. So I think he's one I'll be considering moving. He's just kind of been like a low to mid 50s guy most of the year. And last year, that's great. But this year, there's so many 60 plus guys that he's probably 10 points less than what I could get from like a Couchman or a Kolomatangi or even an Aitken. So I think he might make way, but I would put him in definitely firmly in the holds category because unless you have a real need, he can just sit on your bench this week. Like I said, you only need 13 scoring players. So he's not a must sell. I'd put him in the holds unless you're really striving for the moon this week.
Yeah, he's a sell for me right now. Exact same logic as you, but I'm looking at selling him right now because he doesn't really help me through the origin period. He's not good enough to be in that starting 13. So exactly parrot your logic there. And then Jackson Purdue is the last one here. Big question mark on him, and he's on the edge of the holds, probably the start of the sells. You could make the call to sell Purdue if you wanted to. So the type of coach who's doing that is probably someone who watched the game that the Cowboys play, watched them get shut down by Manly, watch Purdue look a bit clueless in that game and doesn't really believe in this direction for the Cowboys. I'm not one of those people, though. I personally think that Purdue, he took a bit of time to adjust to center in first grade this year and then really kicked on. I think he can adjust to this role too. So I'm personally willing to give him 3 weeks and say, hey, you know what? He's going to be in my team in round 15. After that, I'll make a call on whether he stays. The reasons for that are, one, the Cowboys play every game until round 27, do not have a bye that affects you basically at all. 2, he will get the half center dual position in round 14. So as long as he stays in the halves next week, he's going to get that dual position, which is so valuable and means you don't have to worry about fluffing about in the halves there. And 3, he's a baller. Like, he's a guy who can play footy, he can score a try. He's shown a lot of ability to run the ball and rack up big work rate there. He's not going to kick much, but we've seen this year guys like Fletcher Sharp, guys like even Tom Dearden as well at the Cowboys, they can light it up as running halves. And I think Jackson Purdue can learn. So his match against the Tigers this week is one that I'm willing to take a gamble on. And I'm definitely going to run a loophole with Jackson Purdue.
Yeah, I think he's an easy hold for me. I think a lot of coaches are in my spot where they've got Farnworth, they've got Lucas. And so with Herbie missing this week, they need that third center. So Purdue is the perfect guy for that. And if he stinks it up this week, I can consider him moving this week. But I think 52 average playing halves and reserves. Cowboys are pretty good this year. They got on a hot run. Last game was a bit of a flash in the pan, I'm hoping. I think that the matchup this week is a lot better. I can see a big score coming his way.
We've got to think of an alternative. So flash in the pan is like good, like a turd in the toilet or something,
Yeah,
for those
true.
one-off bad games.
Yeah, fair enough. Turn in the toilet. Yeah. Well, it's the 100-meter rule. Just bring that back. He'll run for 100 meters this week.
If he runs 100 meters, he goes 50 plus. I guarantee that. Now, sells, and this is, again, subjective, right? So really listen to what we say and make a call on this. Payne Haas have very intentionally made him orange on this screen at 969K, so just under $1 million. He is confirmed to play Origin as of right now. Stephen Crichton's still up in the air, but Payne Haas playing Origin this week under a bit of an injury cloud, then backing up a couple of days later. Not ideal for your fantasy side, right? So I look at this and I just think, if I can use the money in a way that makes an impact for my team and nets me, a few hundred points over the next month of footy, I'm very seriously considering it. And for my side, I'm probably not going to do it because I just don't need to make enough trades to justify round 15, right? But for the right team, like if you are someone who's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 players short in round 15 and you could sell Haas, it gets you to Koloamatangi, it allows you to upgrade to Jaden Campbell, all that sort of jazz, then it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, Biz?
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like people are running low on trades now. I think Haas does back up and score pretty well still. I just feel that Broncos are not winning and they're fighting for their life to make the 8 at the moment after looking like a top 2 team to start the year. I just don't think they've got the depth in the forwards to rest Haas and Carrigan. That niggly injury is not great. But even if a Haas plays 40 minutes, it's 50 points. So I would just be holding him unless you're really desperate for players. And I'm talking like you have no mids in round 15 sort of situation. Then I'd consider it. But it'd just be silly going to Koloamatangi and then Koloamatangi plays Origin next round 15. So I would not, if you're desperate for mids, I'd take a more surefire bet. But look, there's no surefires for buyers. I mean, like the buyers are just so fluid. You can't buy people for round 15 this far ahead and make any guarantees. And I know it's only 2 weeks out, but I mean, I'm going to go the third person on this list, Leka Halasima. I bought him a few weeks ago for round 12. I didn't even play him last week because I ended up getting Hosking instead. And things like that just always appear. So I wouldn't go too crazy making trades for the sake of buys because the thing with Haas is he could score 50 this week and he could score 100 next week. And, then he doesn't miss that many games because of the Origin schedule, but I would be firmly holding Payne Haas, like I said, unless you got 0 mids in round 15. But otherwise, he's a firm hold.
Let's shout out too, by the way. Like you said, the Broncos need wins. So there's a good chance that he does back up, even if they're on the fence about it. He has Manly this week who, man, you saw Manly last week.
Pack.
Like,
Totally
they're
pack.
missing. Let me throw something at you. They're missing Jake Trbojevic at lock. They're missing Taniela Paseka at prop. And they're missing Takiaho as their other starting prop. So their entire middle rotation basically is just on tilt here. Now, Payne Haas, if you're talking about a guy playing 40 minutes and scoring 80 points, like this could be the record for PPM performances in a game over 30 minutes here. Like he has that serious potential, especially coming back from Origin. So yeah, there is a world where he crushes it, right? I mean, if he backs up, you probably can't really justify selling him. But again, if you're a team who started late, you're low on cash, that kind of thing, the rules are a bit different. For someone like that, it makes sense. And I will say too, Biz, last year we had so much less cash. Last year I'd be saying sell Haas. But this year we got the money. That's why he's orange. I don't think we necessarily need to. But there are certain teams who have sent it to me and sent the idea and sent me their team. And I've looked at them and just thought, you know what, actually for you, this makes sense. Go and do that. Beef up your side, chase some ranks, and move up in the buy rounds.
Yeah, but no, it's definitely one worth considering. I think for the majority of teams, it's a hold. But for some, like you said, as a sell. But yeah, moving on to the list, a lot of easier decisions here. Dylan Egan, easy sell for the season. I don't think we have to say anything about that. Only thing is that Luciano Leilua could be a buy at 420K. He's been a 45 to 50 guy when he plays 80 minutes. So, it could be interesting to see that. I mean, Toby Couchman is dual position, so maybe he'll play some edge. I don't know. Halasima, look, I'll talk about Halasima quickly just because I have him in my team. Didn't really pan out. I had a low 50s average in reserves. I mean, he hasn't been bad by any means. Mid 40 scores, 65 minutes last week and bench this week. Doesn't play around 15 or 18. So the uses of him is pretty. The thing with that is I'm not going to use him. He's sitting on outside my 17, and I could turn him into an Aitken or a Kolomatangi pretty easily, or a Campbell. So
Yeah.
he's out of my team this week.
I will just shout out, and you're absolutely right. Everything you said is right. He has monstrous potential, though. Like the excitement I have about him going forward is there. And you talk about that, when he plays 80 minutes, he scores 45 points, almost exclusively in base stats. He's got some attacking upside there too. So at some point, I think things are going to click, and he's going to be one of those 50 plus average back rowers. And if he got into next year and he was priced at, let's say he was priced at sort of high 30s, and we knew he was going to start in the back row, I'd be jumping on him 100% because I think he has that. I mean, that Ellie Katoa
And I was
sort of
just going to
potential,
say, he's
right?
your Eli Katoa. I was just coming off mute to say that, so
Yeah,
glad you
yeah,
said it.
yeah, mate. He's a beast. He's a beast. Like you just love watching him play, and big attacking upside there. A Warriors team that's improving and building towards being a title threat in the next couple of years. I'm watching him closely over a multi-year period. If I was in a dynasty team, a dynasty league, I'd jump on Halasima hard. Now, Rob Toya's up next, and this one's not desperate right now. So if you have Rob Toya and he looks like he's going to back up from Origin, which I'll give some confirmation. If you guys follow us on Instagram, Casual NRL, I'll post as much as I can, like what I know about players backing up as we get the information. But as of today, Origin hasn't happened yet. Rob Toya, he's playing against Latrell. They have capable backup in Dom Young, and they just moved Nwangani Tuase to the center spot. So I don't think they're going to press to make Toya back up. If you have Toya, though, and he doesn't back up, he missed last week, and he'll miss the next 3 games as well, and then potentially play a game and then miss another 2 games. So he may not play another game for the next sort of 6 weeks of footy, which makes him pretty easy to sell. The only case that I could make here for holding him is, one, good break even this week. He'll make some cash if he does play. And 2, there's no guarantee that he keeps his origin spot. If he doesn't keep his origin spot, he becomes very relevant for round 15 and round 18. So that's what you'd hold him for.
Yeah, I just can't imagine them dropping a young guy after one game when they've gone out of their way to pick him. And I don't think he's going to be over. Like, he just seems like a cool, calm, collected kid.
Yeah.
But I think he's an easy sell because, like you said, if he does get picked for game 2 and 3, he misses every game pretty much. So easy sell for me. I'll let you cover Tamale because I know you've been holding him for a long time. I think he's still in your squad. What are you doing?
Yep. He's sitting there, mate. He's sitting there. Tamale is a frustrating one because you see, like, the most exciting times I have as a Tamale owner are the plays where Ethan Strange throws the ball behind Seb Chris and it bounces along the ground and Tamale runs back to get it. That's really the only time he gets past the ball in attacking positions. And almost invariably, every time that happens, he breaks a couple of tackles and potentially makes a line break. So I think this guy's a monster, and I think he could easily be a 55 average at some point in his career on the wing or at center. I think he might be one of the premier wingers in the game if he goes to the right situation or if Canberra start playing differently. But as it is today, he just gets no ball. Like, you've got Hudson Young, who's a try-scoring machine in his own right. I'm not criticizing him. Seb Chris is having a great year, but isn't really a passer of the ball. And Ethan Strange, who is a half in jersey number only and is just a dynamic ball runner, absolute machine. Man, he ignores Tamale, right? So I think at 5 to 20, 12K, you're only holding Tamale for round 18, really. He doesn't have nuclear upside. He doesn't score multiple tries in a game. I think this is a guy who he's a safe one to hold, dual position, bit of coverage there. But if you can move him on and make a better move, then go and make that move today.
I'd sell him. He doesn't, like I said, doesn't play around 12, so I'd move him on. He needs a Brad Takarangi inside him, just a passing center who can unleash him. So, yeah, look, I think he's a easy sell this week at that odd price. He doesn't have much more cash to make and doesn't play the big buy coming up. So he's a good option to straight swap to some of our guys in the buy section. But, yeah, look, this week's an interesting one, having to play 13 players where most people will have 15, 16 good scorers. I'm having to leave out a couple of guys this week with 50-plus averages. So it's really, I assume everyone's captaining Terrell May this week, and it's really how stacked is your front 13. But it's actually a week where you could get away with making no trades and just banking them. Like, I wouldn't trade in anyone you're leaving in your NPRs. Like, that to me is, unless they're going to make 50, 60K this week, probably unnecessary. I'd only trade in players that I'll be using in my 13 this week. So guys like Kolomatangi, Aitken, I wouldn't bother with some of these guys who don't make my 13. So Yeah, that's my last view on buy, hold, sell for this week.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. My advice this week is all going to be built around. I mean, look, it depends on Origin too, right? But we're doing Pimp My Team on Thursday this week instead. So it's all going to be built around how do you get Kalomatangi into your team. I think everyone needs to find a way to get him. Outside of that, it's all optional. Make your own calls. Like if you're short at a position, we can make those moves. But if you've got a starting 13 and they're relatively capable, you run with that. You run some loopholes. You set it up well. Biz, thanks for jumping on. This one's pretty quick fire. It was pretty straightforward this week. Last thing I'll throw to you, Origin predictions. I'll give you mine, then I want to hear yours. I'm thinking the Blues get up, and I've just upgraded the Blues score a bit here. 26-16 in this game because Payne Haas is playing. I think Dylan Edwards, man of the match. I think he shuts everyone up, pumps out 300 meters plus, and is very involved in attack.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I want to say, look, I just think the Blues have too much firepower. I think Blues get up 36, Queensland 12. And I think Latrell will have a man of the match performance to score a hat trick.
Big win for the Blues. Guys, let us know in the comments, what are your Origin predictions? Biz, thanks for jumping on, mate. Appreciate you. And everyone, good luck this week. Make your trades. Don't go too crazy this week, but get yourself set for round 15. We'll see you guys there.